Okay, so it's been a couple of months since Sepulcher in 9.2 has came out. We thought it was a great time to revisit our 9.2 Shadowlands Mythic Plus tier list, talk about the things we got right, maybe flame one another for the things that we were very wrong about. But there are a couple things that we also need to talk about whenever we are re-ranking some of these specializations based on our criteria and the things that we were looking at coming into 9.2, right?
Yeah, so we made these lists. First of all, these are M plus focused, not raid. Second of all, we did this before several rounds of tuning. Obviously, there's been more recent tuning once the patch went live, but even right at the start, there was a couple of them, and where we noticed those, we'll point them out as well. And also, we did try and factor in 4-piece and double Lego, so we can't give ourselves any bonus points if that was what made a spec good or bad. We were already trying to plan for that world.
And we brought back our guest, Dorki, to come and explain to us why we're so dumb. Again.
Well, he helped us make the list, so you know
exactly
why all three of us might. But actually, okay, so taking a look at our
effort.
It was, yeah, exactly. So we want to start off with tanks, yeah?
Yeah, so let's start off with tanks, and we should go bottom to top, I think. Blood Death Knight. I think that, so this Blood DK placement was a miss, but the reason that we had it placed there was a couple of things, right? Was it the 2-piece or the 4-piece that got massively buffed in between our video and then like the patch going live? So Blood DK was super bad up until that point, and now it's basically the best tank in the game, I think.
Yeah, so I still stand by it being a B at the time. It was a very bad tank. You couldn't get your dancing longer than 15 seconds, and now you're like literally holding a 2-minute long dancing. I've had like fights where I'm like dancing for 2.5 minutes almost with Kyrian. So that class got absolutely buffed beyond like any other spec in the game at the time.
Yeah,
so that's like easily an S tier.
We'll bump that up to S.
Yeah, but this one I agree with us not losing any points. Like if we were giving ourselves points for how well we did here, because the change was massive, right? The Blood Decay 2-piece used to read Heart Strike increases your strength by 1% and the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon by 0.5 seconds, and that changed to 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, the weapons didn't affect that, right? Like it was only your own Heart Strikes. They changed it so that the bonus copies, which you have 2 extra weapons, those now give you an extra duration and percent strength. That's the real OP part.
Yeah, so effectively it tripled the size of the 2-piece, but it did way more than triple how much extra time you got out of it, because it brought you above your global cooldown instead of below it in terms of like how much rune weapon uptime you could generate. So that was really, really, really big, and a huge part of why the spec is so good is that full uptime rune weapon, basically.
Yeah. So next up, we have the Protection Warrior, which I feel like we were pretty spot on.
I'm happy leaving that thing in B. Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing our list did was it kind of we left C and D empty because we thought everything was going to be fine. I think Prot Warriors, it is legitimately fine. Like, it's really not. I think there's a community perception of it being worse than it is, because it's definitely like worse than the other tanks, but it's definitely not like if you go into a dungeon with this spec, you're going to disappear.
I mean, looking at our criteria, it was a spec with weaknesses that make it a noticeably harder to use.
No, that's
tank
even
to
the
use
lower
effectively.
one.
Exactly, to make it a noticeably harder choice to use effectively. That's for C tier. I don't think that Prot Warrior is even that. I think that it's pretty okay in B.
Yeah, to be honest, even right now, I think it's underrated. Like, people probably think it's a C, but I honestly don't think. I feel like B is pretty fair. If anything, I would like almost even put it in A.
Really?
But yeah, because like I feel like it's better than some of these tanks, and people probably don't really think so.
Well, one of these tanks got
B is probably 5-ish.
Yeah. Vengeance Demon Hunter. Gosh, I don't even know. I don't even see Vengeance all too often at this point.
I've been playing a ton of Vengeance in like mid to low keys, and it's very good and fun at that level. But yeah, I mean, there are people using it at very high keys as well, although not very many. But some of the highest keys have been done with Vengeance Demon Hunter tanks.
Kind of loves Vengeance. So but it's like it's not one of the specs that I commonly see. Dorki, do you know much about like what China's doing with the Vengeance Demon Hunter to be able to do like 30s and even higher keys?
It's one of those tanks that I think is really good, but nobody really plays it. I mean, it is a very popular tank in China, I've noticed, for some reason. Like, even when VDH isn't very good, They just love playing that class, but it does work well. I think the biggest weakness by far is their single target, like their single target survival and damage. When it comes to tanking really high tyrannical keys, or when you're trying to time keys, that's where it falls short.
I feel like B is kind of a reasonable place to leave this, although it really does feel like if you're just like blasting weekly keys, I think Vengeance is probably one of the best tanks to do it on because it's just so good at like smashing those pulls, and it doesn't run into those weaknesses of like you are dead to auto attacks from tyrannical bosses.
I mean, we've even seen it in the MDI for those reasons specifically because like their 4-set makes them super solid.
But yeah, I think we can leave
even
it.
their AoE damage is just pretty okay.
Yeah, especially when you don't have to worry about dying and kiting.
Okay, next up we got Guardian Druid, which okay, so there's been a lot that's happened with Guardian Druid. So first off, I'm pretty sure we were wrong to place this in A. I'm like mostly sure that it was an S tier tank at the time, but we didn't understand the impact of.
No.
I would have maybe been lower on it. Yeah, I don't know. You don't think before the nerfs?
No. I feel like the nerfs didn't really like. Look, I'll be honest. Even before the nerfs, Bear wouldn't have been that good. It might be like you're crazy,
so
right? Like it's doing so much
damage.
overall damage. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, the weaknesses are still there. Like I'll say exactly what I've said during the time we made this video. This class just has no way of surviving or doing single target damage even before the nerfs, because the nerfs didn't technically do anything, right? Like all it did is lower their damage. Okay, but I mean, you're still paper outside of Incarn. Like, what do you do outside of Incarn, right?
Yeah. Oh gosh. It's tough.
I definitely don't want it to go up, and I don't think it would have been an S. I think it was either an A or a B before the first nerf, and the second nerf I think yoinks it on down to C.
The problem before the nerf is people
tank,
were playing literally 2 tanks in their groups because Guardy was that silly.
I mean, I that was not good, but I was just like, sort of for memes and yeah, like how people try like 5 blood decays right now. It just doesn't work even though the class is OP.
All right, C, is it C now? I mean, after the nerfs, it basically does 0 damage.
It's the worst tank now.
Whole threat. Yeah, it is really bad right now.
Yeah, so again C, but also I think A would have been fine if they hadn't changed it. Maybe it was supposed to be B, but I still think this is like a nerfs related adjustment rather than like a we were dumb adjustment.
Yeah, we were close.
We got some of those coming, but
before. Yeah,
we were definitely close on being correct about like what its strengths and weaknesses were whenever we initially made this. So okay,
I said, I would have said it'd been okay in like halls before.
It was go ahead. Broken at halls. And then we have Brewmaster Monk and Prot Paladin. So I think that we were way too hot on Prot Paladin coming into the tier, for both Raid and Mythic Plus. I'm pretty sure we were just way too hot on how good this was going to be. And a lot of it was off the back of how good Prot Pally seemed in 9.1 whenever basically all of the great push teams were playing Prot Paladin.
Agreed. I think it is a little bit too hot.
Yeah, I mean, there are people doing 29s, there's 30s done with Prot Paladin, but it's very few compared to even Brew, which is also way less than the red, C.
To be fair, though,
covering the IO leaderboards.
If Blood Decay wasn't up there, if they stayed as weak as they were, I do think Prot would have been pretty close to S. So I feel like it's not too far off.
I think an A is probably warranted for Prot Paladin, but I do think it's worse than Brew. But I think both Brew and Paladin are both similarly good, but there's clearly a gap between them and Blood Decay.
The issue with tanks just in general is like, even if this is like the second or third best tank, it's going to be difficult to see in a lot of top groups, just due to the fact that like there's only one tank in your group. And so like more often
everyone's
than not,
always just going to gravitate towards the best.
Exactly. And especially whenever you're watching like top groups, they're always going to play the best tank. So I think that A is warranted, but I think it's because Blood Decay is like really giga dominant. Same thing for Brewmaster Monk.
I would say it's like Brew, I think we keep an S for sure. Well, I mean, this was before I would have said keeping an S, but maybe now I would put in like an A.
Yeah, I think it's better than Paladin and worse than Blood Decay, so it's hard to we don't have a tier between those two. So I don't know. I mean, looking at the numbers of who's playing what, I mean, it's like 17 of the top 20 are DKs, and you have to go down like 10 spots to find somebody that's not a DK. But when you actually look at like Brewmaster's doing keys, it looks great, right? Like it looks phenomenal. So I'm torn between the two for that reason as well.
I think it's probably fair to put it in A just due to the fact that DK is so dominant. right now, and it's not necessarily the fact that like it's more based on like what our definitions were. It's like, oh, this is a common tank to see in top groups, whereas S is like the exceptional choice that will dominate the top of the leaderboard, which I think is fair for the Blood DK, and I don't necessarily think it's like fair for the Brewmaster Monk. But I think that Brewmaster and Paladin are both great choices that you're never upset to be playing or being playing with.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It's also giga good in Plaguefall. Like whenever you need like the spell, this thing, Brewmaster Monk, so sick.
Yeah, I think honestly, like the thing about Brew and Paladin is I don't really think they're any worse than we thought they were. It's just like Blood DK shot up and created a tier above where they had been.
That's probably true. That does seem actually pretty fair.
All right. So overall on tanks, I think we did pretty good. Obviously, a lot has moved around, but I think most of that is due to Blizzard Entertainment and not ourselves. So
Bear and Blood DK.
God
I think
damn,
at
Blizzard
worst we were
Entertainment
like,
ruining Bear Tank, right?
yeah.
All right. So let's take a look at healers, which I think we're a little bit closer on, at least from start to finish, than we were necessarily on tanks. At the bottom, Disc Mistweaver Monk. I think that's like pretty correct. It's like a spec with weaknesses that makes it noticeably harder to use effectively. For Disc Priest, we knew that they were going to be struggling to just the throughput healing wise. Like they did bring some okay stuff with like Fey Guardians and like PI, but at the same time, we also thought they were probably going to be playing Kyrian and Mythic Plus, which would give them a little bit more damage. But they're relatively lackluster. They also run into this issue that Holy Priest is a lot better, so it's difficult to use effectively. Mistweaver Monk, their damage is just the worst healer out of all the healers. I don't even think their throughput is necessarily that bad. Maybe Mistweaver we put a little low, but I think that disc is warranted.
Mistweaver, if you look on the IO leaderboards, you have to go past like double digits of all 4 other healing classes before you find the first
man,
Mistweaver. It is legitimately rough out there for Mistweaver. Like that spec needs some assistance.
Okay,
it's just their damage is super lacking, and they don't really bring anything too special, especially with a Windwalker in the group already.
Yeah.
So I think with the criteria of like weaknesses that make it noticeably harder to use effectively, that's probably pretty fair for both these specializations.
Yeah, it's worth noting that it's not like they can't heal the content, right?
Yeah.
It's more a case of like they do not bring any noticeable upside relative to every other healer, and they do have a noticeable downside relative to every other healer. So, but like if you're, trying to play the game at anything beyond a level where like the timer starts creeping up against you, then you'll be fine with a Mistweaver for sure.
Next up, Resto Druid. Dorki, have you played with much Resto Druid this season?
No, but I still feel like it's a little bit underrated.
Okay.
I honestly think it should be bumped into an A, but like,
do we want to gap here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Why do you want it bumped up into an A? I actually don't disagree. I think that's actually pretty valid.
Yeah, like they have most of what they need to be good, right? Like they have solid damage. Damage is definitely not bad at all. I've seen JB and Roybin and I forget who else, but like I feel like and Greg's been playing a little bit, and like the damage is really not that bad. And obviously their healing's insane. Like we all know how insane Resto Druid's healing is.
What
when
legendaries?
It comes to any throughput, they'd be completely okay.
What legendaries in Covenants did they end up on? Okay, Circle. Okay.
I assume Necrolord mostly. Sometimes Kyrian. Circle for damage, and VI if they really want to bump up that single target healing.
Makes sense. I mean, Verdant Infusion is like not bad for being able to get decent throughput if you need it, but it's certainly going to be one of the worst damage options, I think, of the top 4 healers. Yeah. Which is
I mean, it does sort of help with damage because like it lets you stay in cat form more, so that's like technically helping your damage.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, now can I interest you in a swap of the Holy Priest and the Resto Shaman, perhaps?
I think I will take you up on this offer immediately. So we knew that H-Priest was good because Dorki was the one who actually... So we thought that H-Priest was going to be decent. Dorki was running with a lot of Chinese Holy Priests during the PTR,
I undersold it a little bit. I definitely undersold it because I was like, man, is there any world where Holy Priest is actually going to become meta?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is we've had like five of these patch cycles where people are telling me Holy Priest is going to be good, and it never was, and now, whew.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's crazy, right?
Well, so this was also when Vesper Totem got buffed, right? Like now it got nerfed. So it went from being buffed to reverted to nerfed, right? Was that what happened?
Yes.
Yeah, and we recorded this right after the buff and before the revert and then the nerf. Yeah. So in that world, Resto Shaman would have probably been an S with Holy Priest, but Yeah, definitely down to A. So I think we were low on Holy Priest, but we were probably correct given the patch, that we were expecting for Resto Shaman.
I think that for Resto Shaman, it still actually has I think it's top of A. I think it's probably the best healer that's in A right now, and it definitely has some very strong uses, specifically for like Halls of Atonement or things that you need like decurses for. Like we even see some of the top groups, the Echo group, they notably run a Resto Shaman all the time in HOA just because they do need that decurse. And so, like, the Resto Shaman still has pretty high value. And if there were teams that were, like, trying to push the highest keys with the Resto Shaman, I believe that there's even... Is there 1 or 2 Resto Shamans in the top 5 right now?
Yeah, there's a couple pushing, actually.
The top is in 7th, and then we have 19th and 20th.
Okay, so yeah, 3 in the top 20. I mean, that's not bad, given the fact that H Priest does seem like it's again kind of similar to tanks where there's a snowball effect. There's only one slot, so the healers and the tanks are going to gravitate towards like what is the absolute best specialization. It runs into those things. It's like, okay, Resto Shaman's not that bad. It's slightly worse than H Priest, but it's probably not even that much worse healing throughput wise, but it's slightly worse damage wise, and the utility that the H Priest brings. I don't know. It's weird. I think both of the specs and comparing them apples to apples like that is not necessarily fair to either one.
Yeah, to be honest, they're both like pretty S tier-ish. It's just a PI diff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is you look at all these characteristics and then you don't look at the Destro Lock doing 5k more because there's a Holy Priest in the party. Yeah.
Okay, so H Pally we ranked based off like potential and stuff like that, where we thought that maybe groups are going to start running into survivability issues once they started reaching higher keys. We have seen that being actually a thing, but everybody's running like 15 to 20% avoidance. Were we wrong on Holy Paladin? I think that's probably pretty fair.
I feel like Holy Paladin can stay in A. Well,
yeah. So for a look at like representation, it's doing better than Resto Shaman. It's got 4 in the top 20.
Yeah, the Chinese players love Holy Paladin.
Yeah, that's true. 3 of those players are on the Chinese servers, but there's a European up there as well.
Early on, it was awful to play with Holy Paladin. That was one of our justifications. It was really bad. It was really bad early.
Oh, it has never been fun to play with a Holy Paladin. No, Holy Paladins suck all of the enjoyment out of the group for sure, but that doesn't mean they're not good.
Thank God they're not meta anymore, right?
Yeah, so true.
Oh yeah, very, very true. I think it's pretty fine to leave it here. I think overall,
yeah, I think it's pretty fine.
This seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, so again, maybe a little low on Resto Druid. Maybe I honestly still wouldn't hate it being in B. And then obviously the Resto Shaman and Holy Priest flip. But again, a better tier list than some that I've put out in my life. So
we were pretty close on the healers. I feel like I feel like we were right on the cusp of being correct on this.
The cusp of greatness, right there.
Okay, let's jump over to DPS. I don't know how much is going to move by a ton. I think that with DPS, there's so many specs that anything that moves 2 ranks, we were probably wrong about. Most of the things may move up or down like 1, and it's going to be fine. That's just like the normal variance of DPS. If it moves 2, then we missed something. Or it got buffed / nerfed, and there was no way that we were going to possibly be able to tell buffs and nerfs withstanding. So let's start with D tier. I think that the D tier, just in general, was a little bit better than I think we initially anticipated.
Yeah. I kind of hesitate to have Rhett down here with like, I mean, I guess all 3 of these were
Pharaoh's not that bad either.
Yeah, they're all kind of fine. Maybe this should have been an empty D tier and these should have all been C.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, I don't really agree in the D tier just because DPS specs aren't that far apart, right?
If anything, like, Moonkin D tier.
I'd be down for that too.
D for dumpster.
D for Doomkin.
Maybe even C for Moonkin TBH. I don't know. I guess we're getting a little bit ahead of our sequencing. Yeah,
we'll talk about it in a little bit. Okay, so for Rhett, Feral, and Afs, Feral has gotten multiple buffs. Af has gotten multiple buffs. Did Rhett get buffed at all?
There were some quality of life minor buffs to it, but not massive. Yeah.
They also buffed Divine Storm, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could say all 3 of these got buffed, and that's why they're in C and not D. But I think probably realistically, even if they hadn't gotten buffed, there's a good chance they still would have not been D. Like I think D tier should really be used for like when things are like BFA affliction for the first couple patches, right, where it's just like so bad. It
was weird because I thought that Feral and Rhett specifically were going to be that bad in Mythic Plus. It just ended up, their damage ended up being slightly a bit better than we thought. Where they're, I don't call them competitive because we got some real outliers this season, but like it's not so far.
They're competitive with the middle of the pack. Right?
Yeah, they're competitive with the middle of the pack, which is fair. Unholy Enhance BM and Shadow is what we have here. Are any of these, like in particular, do we feel like any of these were ranked incorrectly? Maybe like I'll say Beastmaster, but that one's not even like that great right now.
I don't even know what Beastmaster does.
It's a
I played
bystander.
the BM
Numbers
Hunter
do it.
yesterday. Yeah, it aspires to be competitive with the middle of the pack. Yeah.
I think it would be a crime to put them in the same tier as MM though. So okay, I'm definitely
yeah,
leaving in C.
Yeah, for
I'm pretty
sure.
happy with these being C. I mean, there's
Yeah, I'd probably
some
leave 'em there.
blaring weakness, right? Like Shadow, Unholy, and Enhance are all blasters on Tyrannical, right? Like these specs can just nuke bosses from orbit, right?
Yep.
But they all struggle to deal damage in AoE situations, right? So it's like it's a very conditional type of spec, and I think C is the appropriate place for them.
Yep, and then BM has some really niche like damage profile
Yeah.
concerns that I think that C is probably pretty fair for them.
It also struggles in the AoE side of things as well. Yeah,
Any movement here? We're actually kind of okay with this C tier because I think
I'm pretty okay with all of it.
I'm fine with it. Yeah,
Havoc and Frost. Oh man. So I think a Havoc is maybe pretty solid for B. Is Frost in the wrong spot? I think that is Frost better than what we thought initially? Or Dorky? What did you end up thinking? Because I think you ranked this one specifically.
I feel like it's so like I said I was initially thinking it was closer to an A just because their damage is really good. I mean the damage is still really good. They do like pretty competitive damage with even Windwalkers and sometimes survival. But they have too many weaknesses, I feel like. Aggro's like a huge issue for them. There's no real reason to ever really bring a Frost DK over these other specs.
Slightly behind in either damage or utility when compared to the A tier specs, but still will be very frequent choices. Okay, so I think that this is...
I think B is preferred. Like maybe like a really high B. That's probably like the best way of putting
put
it.
them at the top of the B. Okay, so Havoc, fun being B.
yeah. I think in a better balanced world, Havoc and Frost are examples of what I think good M plus specs should look like. But they accidentally made some specs that are twice as good as a good M plus spec should look like, and so we cannot promote these above B.
Agreed.
Marksmanship Hunter, their damage is relatively solid this season, right? I don't even think that they're necessarily that bad. I think that they fall into the issue of like, why are you playing an MM Hunter whenever you can play a Serve Hunter? Is MM an A tier spec though? I guess this is the question. I think that they bring like super solid damage, especially whenever they're playing Kyrian.
That is true.
Their double legendary, I initially thought wasn't going to do a lot for them, and I think that that's why we ended up slamming them into B, because the Resonate Arrow legendary is not great for Mythic Plus because it just provides like group-wide crit, but I do think that they're probably a little bit better damage-wise than some of these other B tier options. I don't know. I would be inclined to put them in A, but I've also would have probably been inclined to put Frost DK in A, and I feel like not moving Frost Death Knight up, if we're going to move MM Hunter up, is probably...
Yeah, maybe like a really high B again.
Yeah,
same, like similar thing.
I think both of these are B. Yeah.
It's just weird because like I think if we're not going to move Frost DK up, there's no way we can move MM Hunter up, and it's like these are sick damage. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that we should end up with a tier list here that is has a very big gap between the top few specs and the rest, because that's what the metagame looks like right now.
yeah,
I am down for that. And you might as well put Havoc too on a really high B because it's a really good.
Yeah,
spec,
it is also totally. I think it's one that if you look at representation and stuff, is doing better.
There's like
than,
a top team that has.
Yeah, Havoc has people above like 3,800, multiple people, whereas those other two specs do not.
Oh, interesting. But okay,
yeah.
I mean, we're ranking. This is like some of this is like based off potential, some of this based off like actual performance. Sometimes,
yeah, the Havoc's like, I mean, especially in
good.
high keys, like you'll see Havoc looks a little bit worse in low keys because especially the Venthyr playstyle, you just get this sinful brand that falls off on everything in the big pulls. But yeah, in the high keys, its damage is really not that far behind, and Chaos brand is really big. But
Chaos brand,
still, I
especially
couldn't
with
justify putting any of these specs
in this game.
Yeah,
I saw somebody do a 29 Halls of Atonement on a Havoc Demon Hunter. And so the Havoc Demon Hunter was a nice 24,000 DPS. And you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then you look right above the Havoc Demon Hunter, it's a Destro Warlock. And the number that they're doing is 44,000 DPS.
right, but
Yeah, but you take
2.2k
5%
of that. Yeah, 2.2k of that needs to go from the Destro Lock to the Vengeance or the Havoc Demon Hunter. So, we're
And survival bombs and healer damage.
They were playing with the mage. They weren't playing with the
damage.
Surf Hunter. It was
Okay, well,
Oh,
they
mage
made
is
some
even
mistakes
all
down the
magic.
line, but yeah, all of that damage, yeah.
And also, you got to think Arcane Intellect is going to take damage from the Destro Lock to the mage. So, that's all.
Yeah.
It's all tax. There's a lot of tax to be paid by that Destro Lock. That it's
Yeah.
it's not take home
Infusion
DPS
too.
there. Exactly.
So Havoc's realistically doing like 30k there. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
We're coping really
No,
hard.
actually, though. No, it's
This
not
guy-
cope.
no,
It's not
unironically,
cope, man. It's
30K.
And then you have
actually
to Sinful Brand, that's a defensive for your tank as well. That's
Oh,
letting your tank
dude,
stay in.
30%?
That's the only
Yeah, that's
reason the
insane.
mobs are staying in the Rain of Fire, right?
So the tank has to pay a DPS tax as well?
Well, it's the only reason the mobs are still in the Rain of Fire, right?
Oh.
Because the tank is able to survive because the mobs have Sinful Brand slowing their attack and cast speed. So it all comes together, right? It's all part of the healthy ecosystem.
Let's put it in the high B.
That's some hopium.
Yeah,
Okay.
Havoc. It's like the slugs that eat your compost or whatever. It's not pretty, but it's part of how the ecosystem functions.
Okay, Ellie Shaman. It's probably bottom of
I'd be
B.
tempted to put it in C.
I'd be
Yeah,
tempted to put
I
it in
also
C.
want to lob it into a different tier than Frost and then
Love
Havoc.
it, yeah.
Okay,
I'm down for that.
okay. Whenever you say it like that, yeah, I'm down to move it. So actually, whenever we recorded this, it was a little bit better than we were worried that we were about to be just majorly wrong on this because there was a very weird interaction with Storm Elemental and their 4-set, right?
Yeah, something you've gotten a lot of hate about calling a bug, but yeah, it was something that you and I both predicted was gonna not make it to live, where you could just spam Chain Lightning down to the like 20 stacks of Storm Ellie speed increase, and then if you got enough cooldown reduction to get your Storm Ellie back up, you
Yeah.
could press it again and maintain those 20 stacks. And they changed that so that's no longer the case, which ended up being functionally a massive nerf, but also it changed a playstyle that I was pretty sure was not going to make it to live. And yeah, so that had that persisted, there's a chance that Ellie would have been above B. But yeah, C I think is fair.
So next up, we have Outlaw and Sin. I don't know. There wasn't like an Outlaw icon. We'll use this one as the Outlaw icon, even though these are both like assassination icons. I'm pretty sure.
Outlaw's not bad.
Dude, people tweet about this spec I swear, if I read Twitter and looked at JPC's Twitter, I would tell you that the spec deserves to be in D tier because it's bad. But I think I'm being gaslit.
Outlaw is way better than
Yeah.
Sin. But to be fair, it's copped like 3 PvE buffs since we made the video. So I think failing that, it probably would have been a C, but I think it could maybe hang in B. Without that, I think Sin probably should be popping down to C. Although Rogue Utility
Really?
is really valuable.
Yeah, I don't know if I would put it in C though, because I'm looking at the C specs and I'm like, do they really belong in the same category? Because like, Sinro does bring a lot of niche. Like you could bring in a Plague Fall, for example. You can play Necrolord Sinro and do insane damage with all the haste buffs. And
If
it's, like,
these do
pretty
the same
okay.
damage as any of these, then they should automatically be a tier higher just because they're a rogue, right?
Yeah, that's a good point too, because like they can do similar damage to the C tier specs, but they're rogues, right? Like they'll bring all the rogue stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine keeping them in B just as a protest
maybe
of
just like a really
how
low
much
B.
utility they have. Yeah.
Slightly behind in either damage or utility when compared to the A tier specs will still be very frequent choices. That's fine. I'm done leaving it in B.
Yeah, but for the record, I mean, there is a lot of gap between Assassination and Outlaw in terms of representation. Top Sin Rogue right now, 3650. Top Outlaw, 39.
Really? Who's playing Outlaw?
7 of them. Ramfam,
Ramfam.
Blyko, Chungus, bunch of
Okay.
other people.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
So there's some Outlaw
but
players.
I'm fine leaving them in the same tier. That's fine, sure.
Demonology.
I think
gosh.
B is underrated, but
It's
that's
caught
partially because
a
nobody's
nerve.
playing it since they're all playing Destro, obviously.
Right. That's
Also,
whenever
yeah,
we talk
you
about
can-
rogues and hunters and warlocks, right? That's the issue, is that you literally can press your talent window button and pick a different thing, and that
Yeah.
makes it really hard to judge these different specs of it. But yeah, I think demo is it's a strong choice for. We see it sometimes in MDI. We see it. I think it's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, there are unique strengths to the spec, but
Yeah.
it's not Destro.
Like,
It-
would you guys push it to A? I'm not sure.
The problem is like it is severely lacking in utility. And it's like whenever you're making a composition, it's going to be tough.
Well, the utility is
to-
mostly the same, right? As
Yeah, is
Destro.
Destro?
except for minus blasphemy studs, but yeah, I guess similar utility.
I
and the
think
damage is easily there.
And no imp dispel
Oh, you still could bring out your imp on those bosses, but yeah,
as a demo lock.
dude, that dispel's really big.
Anyways, I think it's pretty fair in B. It was one of those things that was like broken in raid, and then it caught a nerf. It probably was going to be like an A tier spec if it didn't catch a nerf. At the same time, like you're not going to have, if there's only one PI in your group, it's not going to the demo lock either. If you also have a Destro lock in your group, and that's like something that they would really like the PI just to be able to like utilize the haste buff, but I don't think they're going to be able to get it if you're talking about like a pretty reasonable composition. I think that they're close to A as well. I think that a lot of these B tier specs you could chalk it up
Alright,
to
we'll
like
put in the high B. Yeah.
okay, so everything's
It'll
just
be
gonna
in
be in
the
the high
same
B.
as like Frost and yeah. All these are like they're so good, but like
Our tiers,
man,
it's literally going to end up being the same because we're just going to move everything to high B and they're all still in B.
That's how I felt
Yeah,
about
they're
it.
still B, but there's high B now.
All right, well, can I interest you in moving like Arcane Fire or Arms at all, or are you happy with all those being in the same tier as these?
Arms definitely lower it. Arms definitely doesn't belong up there, I don't think.
Yeah, I think so as well.
In B tier at all? You think is it C?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
It
In
has
fact,
gotten buffed
move
recently.
Fury
But
down to B instead.
yeah,
Okay. I think this is reasonable.
the
So
Warriors
you shift
again.
the Warriors down one each.
I think that the comparison between Fury Warrior and Frost Decay is like, wow, they both have this threat problem, but I think Frost is more damn.
This thing also caught didn't it catch a massive nerf coming into the?
It did. The brunt of that nerf was aimed at the Necrolord raid build, but
Exactly. I was going to say, wait a second.
Some did still affect the M plus. Yeah, sure.
I think that this is reasonable to move the Warriors down. I think we were a little bit too high on Warriors just generally coming into the tier than they necessarily deserved.
Especially in M plus. I think that was some of the raid excitement spilling over.
Yeah, which I mean they were good in raid.
That
so.
generally happens with Warriors. I feel like every tier, Warriors looking really good in raid, and you're like, man, the spec surely has to be good in M plus too, right? If it's so good in raid, but it turns out it always falls a little bit short in M plus.
Okay. Fire and Arcane. I mean, I know that Troll runs with an Arcane Mage, but I think it's worse than Fire. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, I think Fire's underrated. I mean, at the time, Fire sucked, but they got massively buffed, right? Like they buffed a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, true. It did get buffed.
I think Fire's a solid A right now.
That's how
I agree.
That's what I was about to say. I'm pretty sure Fire's a solid A. Is Arcane B? I don't even know.
I'm fine with low B or high C for Arcane.
Low B.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm down with low B. Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
and
because
then
like,
how
Fire
about
Mage
Frost?
for sure.
Frost
I would put Frost like lower than Fire, but it's still pretty up there. Because like I feel like mages don't get played much since every single one of them rerolled into Destro Lock.
Yeah.
But the ones who still play Fire Mage are like popping the hell off. Like with China, the number one team in the world at the moment, they play Mage.
Yeah,
pretty consistently.
Mage also plays Frost in a couple of keys. I know like Necrotic Wake specifically is also a Bring Your Son to Work day, and they bring out the Water Ellie and they play Frost and
or Halls. That's another good one.
Yeah. It's another Bring Your Son to Work day key where they play Frost in it. I think that mages are like I think that these two specs are intertwined. This is something that's like difficult to separate from one another because they're going to be playing both the specializations more often than not. It's not just going to be like one or the other. They'll play like both, and I think that's probably pretty fair to leave mage like in this state in A. Moonkin,
yeah,
pretty bad.
Yeah, Moonkin's got to come down to like C, right? Or I mean, there's a. I guess it probably
D, to be honest.
I don't know if it can go all the way down to D. Like, it's really not.
Okay.
It's really not like that dead for keys compared to like if you compare it to bringing like a Shadow Priest or an Enhancement Shaman, right? It's like Moonkin, that you also have at least some, that you're bringing, right?
That's true. You got Treason.
Yeah, like it continues to have a nice utility suite.
May I point you to the fact that there are currently 0 Moonkins in over the rank 1 cutoff.
I believe there's one. Which is
not anymore. No, they got passed. There's 0 now again.
No, there's one. I'm looking at the cutoff.
Oh, okay. There's finally one again. Okay.
There's one Shadow Priest, one Moonkin. No Unholies off of the strength of Unholy alone, but obviously, there are people with Frost and Unholy that, there's people with Frost that get over it. So I don't know. I feel like bad is the right word for it. I think if we were down to move Moonkin down, I would want to move Shadow.
What was our D tier ranking? The specs are tough to play effectively in dungeons. Even when played, they'll struggle to compete with the top specs in damage. They either have fundamental mechanical problems that make their damage not work well in dungeons.
It does sound like Boomkin.
Low tuning on abilities that use some Mythic Plus.
I mean, it sounds like it sounds like Moonkin Shadow Unholy to me, but
I'm down for that. Yeah. No, definitely not Unholy.
Maybe not Unholy.
Like a
we saw Unholy in MDI as well.
Shadow Priest for sure. I'm down for that.
All right, fine. I'm down for these specs.
It's dude. I mean, why do we have Moonkin in A tier?
Maybe BM as well. Honestly,
Why did we have Moonkin in A tier? No. BM definitely does way more damage than both Moonkin
Well, they
and
did get
Shadow.
nerfed a little bit. They caught some nerfs from Raid, right?
The
Like
full
remember
set, it was like
were
a
OP as hell in Raid.
it was like a 4% throughput nerf. Yeah, they did catch a little bit of a nerf since then, but that's not the reason that they're doing zero
Yeah,
damage.
it was definitely a little
Yeah,
bit overrated.
invisible
for sure.
time saves, stuff like Force of Nature, Beam, grouping stuff, and they also, I mean, they do pump like there are some bosses that they pump pretty nicely, right? Like if you're doing like first boss Mist, right, and there's a Moonkin ramp dumping into that damage phase, it's still good.
You're definitely
Wait,
bringing
so
them for their
what-
utility and their low H tier spec, which I mean, I still agree that their utility is some of the like they have one of the
Their
best
utility is keeping
suites.
them out of F tier, that's for sure.
Shit, yeah.
What changed with them, by the way, since we ranked them? I don't even remember. There's been a bunch of Boomkin changes. Like, was this with the Ventfear nerf or
no,
Fury
this
nerf already went through, right?
the nerf had already gone through. It basically their force set got nerfed by 4. Like they lost 4% damage on their force set, but that was basically it. I think that people didn't realize how bad the Venthyr Central Hysteria legendary nerf was going to realistically be, because like on PvE, like it's always difficult to tell just like how bad some stuff is going to be, or how good it's always going to be. Like sometimes you can get a little bit of a read, but you never necessarily. There are 2 Moonkin icons. You never realize like how good or bad some stuff is going to necessarily be, and it's just like one of those things that I don't think that people recognize how awful they were, because they were an S or an A tier spec through season 1 and season 2. So people probably just assumed that they were going to be still decent, even though their damage is going to be a little bit worse.
I think part of it was also because of Raid, right? Like, you know how every guild was just like stacking 5 Boomkins, and Boomkins were supposed to be like the hot commodity
Yeah.
in Raid.
And then to be fair, they were
Like
good in
that.
Raid, right? Like
Yeah,
everybody killed Jailer with 2 Moonkins or more down until like
yeah. Multiple
World.
fights had multiple Boomkins.
I don't know.
I think also there's something to say about like trees are a lot less effective this season. So whenever we look at our tanks are actually kind of cracked right now, and none of them really need trees or like.
Vengeance, I think, is the one that most loves some trees. Yeah.
But like,
Bears
but yeah.
can use trees too.
Well, okay, yeah, bears are still in the spot where, okay, trees are maybe a more effective tank than the bear,
But
but
you-
every other tank is like,
But you get my
Yeah,
point,
they're
right?
vibing.
It's like most of the tanks are okay without trees. Like white swings are a lot less deadly. 4 sets really have empowered tanking. I think that there's like a lot of reasons that Moonkin is now just god awful. For a while, it was doing less damage than Guardian. I was playing Guardian over Moonkin Perma for a little bit.
pain.
Despair. All right, Windwalker Monk. It's got like 3 buffs since
It
we made
has.
this video.
I think it was either high B or low A pre-buff, and it's definitely, now it's like high A or low S with the buffs that it's received. I kind of want to leave it out of S just because I think there is still a gap, but it is
Yeah.
really, really good.
Is it
High A
S?
for sure.
I don't know. High A.
I don't think we put it. I don't think it'll
Like,
belong to
consider that
S
there will be a
spot.
Destro lock in S tier, and anything else in that tier dilutes it, right?
Is it-
we do something like this.
Is this correct? Yeah, I was about to say, is this the correct movement? Is subtlety okay? I guess we'll just talk about it since I just moved some stuff around. Is subtlety A tier? I see a lot. I see it played a lot, but I don't know how good is it really? Is it really better than these B tier specs?
So before I would have said sure, because before it was basically you had a Destro and a Survival, and then you had X, right?
Yes.
Which you just fill with anything, and Sub is really good for filling that slot, right? Because it's like, oh, this class brings great utility. You see it in MDI, it does great single target. But like now, I don't even know if you would put it in A, would you? Since like Windwalker got buffed massively.
Oh,
I'm
God.
fine putting it in B. Like, there's of the top 20 runs, there are no rogues in them.
Really?
Imagine that sentence being said, in a couple of years ago, right? Like,
There are
where every
no
group had a
rogues in the
rogue.
top. Are
There
they all just? What are they playing? With just Windwalker?
They all rerolled, yeah.
It's either Windwalker or Mage. Now, to be fair, there's only a couple of groups in the top 20 runs.
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's like
that's
two,
a lot of
two
it,
or 3
but
groups probably.
still, yeah, the rogues are. Here, actually, I can just.
Are
look
they
at-
on page 2 at least?
Maybe like a high B again once again.
The highest score rogue is in 31st right now among like all players, so it is definitely in.
Oh, it's good.
I-
Oh man, it's so close.
I think that B does make sense. I think that we do want to create a gap here because a gap exists.
Healthy combination of utility and survivability.
They have a lot of utility, but like the thing about these definitions is it kind of falls apart in an environment of horrific balancing, which is the environment we live in right now, right? Like when the balancing is this bad, it warps the meta. yeah, exactly.
And serve.
I'm down for some of this actually.
Oh wait,
yeah.
hold on. I named the wrong.
Wait, it changes everything.
S. All right.
Okay, if we do this, we could maybe even move the A tier up into the old S now or something like that. But yeah, I think this is just kind of
No. I think that there's just a gap here.
a full gap.
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't put Destro that large of a gap. Like Destro for sure is OP, but I don't think you can put him on the same level as Destro.
okay, so
Wait,
so we have, is it like this? Is this where we have it now?
Because, like, to be honest, I feel like the only mandatory pick at the moment in M Plus is Destro.
Yes,
And in fact, some groups are running double Destro.
that
Well,
that
a lot
is
of groups
true.
actually.
all the groups that are
what-
running double Destro, the third is a serve, though, right? You have to go
Yeah,
down
but
35
like the Hunter-
runs before you find a group without either of these, like without one of these specs. All of the top 34 M plus runs all have both Destro and serve.
that is very true.
Really? Okay, I didn't know they were running. Well, I guess at that point, well, we're talking bleeding edge keys. Like
That's
okay.
true.
Yeah.
We're talking like
Yeah,
bleeding edge composition.
well, to be
of course,
fair, it's the
that's
same
that.
people running these keys. Vote,
That is
right?
true. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
so
half
there's
of them
only
are
a few groups.
probably Echo, and the other half is probably the China team.
Yep.
I don't know, of the level 25 and up keys, 15.7% Destro, 13.6% serve, and then we drop down to 8% for the next represented thing, and this is including tanks and healers, and then it's like Resto Shaman, Blood DK, Holy Priest.
Okay.
So it's, if we just look at DPS, yeah, it's like these each have more than 20% representation, and Windwalker is sitting there at 10% at the next best.
It's something where these two specs are miles above the rest, and it's not particularly like the point. The meme is like those two specs miles above the rest. It should come as no surprise to anybody. We were hot on serve coming. Funnily enough, we knew that serve was going to be good. We had them in S. Like we knew that their damage was going to be crazy. People were talking about how they were bugged, but we like it was clear even still that they were going to be doing insane amounts of damage. We thought that Destro was just going to be more or less a trash specialist coming into it. I think that's probably what we wrote like specifically. It's like, oh yeah, these are going to be trash
we
specialists.
felt the exact same as Blizzard, basically. Like we fell into the Blizzard trap hole, and then Blizzard just ends up buffing them because they think that they're going to be weak in single target.
Yep, I mean, we thought that they're going to do no single target damage and then just like kind of be and then they got buffed, which I mean, they didn't need a buff. They were going to be an S tier spec even without it, but it pushes them even further ahead. They had a lot less identifiable weaknesses than I think we necessarily thought, which is why we were wrong to put them in A. They should have been S, but I think it was totally fine. And we were wrong on Rogue because why?
Well, because it's Rogue.
It turns out that much utility is great, but the encrypted affix, the tank durability, and the raw amounts of damage that everything else pulls out made that utility less important. And it's also just like the balance is so bad that, you know, it's literally
I think it's also
enough
their single
damage.
target's not that crazy. I remember, I think it was Frag from Echo, like when they were doing MDI. I think he said that sub rogues do less funnel damage than a Destro lock spamming Rain of Fire.
Anarchy told me the exact same thing whenever I was talking to him about the MDI. I was like, oh yeah, sub rogue's not that bad, right? It does decent funnel damage. He goes, bro, Destro does more priority than sub. And I go, oh.
Yeah, like it's just the Destro is just spamming AoE. Like imagine him spamming Black Powder and it's doing more single target
Yeah.
than the sub rogue.
Oh, okay, I understand now. And it's just like, okay, that makes sense. Any glaring changes to this? I think this feels pretty fair.
Yeah, I think largely we did okay. Obviously, we didn't expect it to be as bad as it is at the top, but you know, if it weren't for Destro serve, I think we'd have a pretty vibrant metagame right now.
So
I think a lot of these B tier specs would get played.
So
and
what
yeah,
we
obviously,
the only thing
Moonkin was the one
wrong
where we're
was-
3 tiers
Moonkin.
off. Yeah.
Moonkin and
Yeah,
Sub
Moonkin
Rogue were the
was
only things that
really
were
off.
2+ tiers off on. All right, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think again, one of our better lists. Some might argue the presence of Dorki here really helped increase the quality of the tier list when we were making it the first time.
Man, I remember you guys put Destro like a B tier or something. I'm like, man,
There's no evidence of that. No way anybody could go.
I
watch
had
the
them in
video.
A. I had them in A. No.
I wanted them to be an S, but everybody else just kept telling me like, no, they're not bad. I caved. What can I say?
I had them in A because I thought they were a trash specialist. However, I didn't realize that they were broken.
yeah. Oh, I think a lot of people fell into the trap of sub rogues. To be fair, because like in the first 2 months of this season, almost everyone was still playing sub rogue. Like the top keys were sub rogue, MDI was sub rogue.
Yep.
And then people were like, maybe it's not so hot after all.
Unrelated, do you think Sub Rogue's going to be gone during the MDI finals?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I
Oh,
could still see it
Windwalker.
being
Well,
really good
never
in some
mind.
keys.
Windwalker's been
maybe.
buffed since then. Sub's gone. Never mind. Never
Yeah,
mind.
but even then, like, if we do see Sub Rogue, I feel like that'd be really interesting. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that this is our tier list revisited. And it was very interesting. Thank you so much, Dorky, for joining us. Any final comments between either you two?
Nerf Destro.
Probably buff Boomkins, I guess.
I'm saying. All right. I think we're going to get out of here. Goodbye, gamers.